In the last section, we got our navigator up and running, but right now we only have one component to show on the screen. Let's stub out a quick view for our sign up component and then finish putting together our navigator. So in our authentication folder, I'm going to create a new component called signup.js. And then inside of here, we're just going to throw in some very quick boilerplate. So we'll say var React, React Native, and then we'll grab text, view, style sheet off of React. We'll do module exports, create a class with the render function, and then we'll just return a view, and we'll give it a style of styles.container. Oops. And then we'll get a text, and for right now we'll just show you can sign up here. Nice and easy. And then we'll do some styling. Var styles style sheet.create. Container is an object with flex 1. We'll center it. And in this case, we're also going to add a background color specifically of white. And you'll see why in a little bit here. Okay, so now that we have some very rudimentary sign up component here, I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now we want to wire up that sign up component to our navigation stack. We want to give users the ability to navigate to that sign up component somehow. So this is really going to go into a two-step process. Step one is to make sure that we add it to the routes hash, the routes object here, so that the user can actually navigate to it. So we will import sign up, and it's in the same folder as the sign in form, so we can just do components, authentication, sign up. And now we're going to add another route in here. The route name is going to be very simple, just sign up, and it will display the component sign up. Nice and simple. Okay, as a quick test, just to make sure that everything is working okay, what we'll do is we'll change the initial route here from sign in to sign up. So now when our component first renders, it's going to try to render the route with name sign up, which will return the sign up component. So I'm going to save this. Let's refresh. And looks good. You can sign up here, just what we wanted. So back in main, I'm going to replace the initial route. We're going to go back to just sign in. And we're back to the form. Very good. So we now have the ability, our application knows about the sign up component. We now have a navigator that knows that, hey, both the sign in component and the sign up component exist. So the question now is, well, how do we tell the navigator to swap between them? So this is where pushing and popping a component comes into play. So let's think about this for a second. Whenever the app starts up, they see the sign up screen, the sign in screen. What we want to do is show a button at the bottom here that says, hey, I need an account, I need to sign up. Whenever the user taps that button, we want to push the sign up view to the top of the stack. So let's give that a shot. We're going to go to sign-in.js, and we're going to add another button in here. And the button for the text, the text for the button will be I need an account. And whenever they press it, we'll run the function on sign up press. Don't forget to close the button tag here. Then we'll add that event handler, like so. Okay, so we're in here and we basically want to do something like, navigate over to sign up. We effectively need to call the navigator and say, hey, please push this new route. Please add on to the stack somehow. So ideally what we would do here is we would say like something, navigator dot push, sign up. This is like, ideal. Oops. This is what we want to have happen here. So I see probably like just one big issue with this. We don't yet have a reference to the navigator. We don't have a reference to it. We can't like reach back up into main somehow, right? And try to get at it. We need to make sure that when we create sign in, we pass the navigator as a property. So we can access the navigator as a property of sign in. So you might ask, well, how in the world do we do that, right? Well, fortunately, as you might imagine, it's not that bad, I guess. I don't know. Every component that the navigator creates, sign in included, the navigator creates sign in, is created right here. We can pass any arbitrary property we want into this component right here, including the navigator, the navigator instance, which is an argument to render scene. So what we'll do is we will say for any time that a component is rendered by the navigator, it's going to get two properties. It's going to get the current route and it's going to get the navigator instance. So now when sign in is created and rendered by the navigator as this component right here, we are going to pass the navigator as a property to the sign in component. Then the sign in property, or excuse me, the sign in component here can just say this dot props dot navigator, like so. And poof, that's our reference to the navigator. So then we can just call push. And what we're going to do here is we're not going to say like, I know that when we discussed the navigator, we were talking about pushing views, but really what we're pushing is pushing routes. We're pushing route names. So we will add another route onto the stack of sign up. So let's go ahead and save and give this a shot really quick. Okay, so here's our button. And hey, it works. Awesome. Navigation. There it is. Let's do it again just for fun. Not bad. So you can also see how, that transition floating in from the right here, that we set it up in the configure scene, the float from right is working. So I'll see the view float in from the right. Awesome. So you might notice if you're on the simulator here, there's a little bit of lag to it. Don't worry, if you're on an actual mobile device, you won't notice any of that lag. It's just part of the difficulty of running the simulator that you see that kind of little graininess to the animation. All right, so let's do a quick recap on what we just did here because it does, it is kind of a little bit of magic. Whenever our navigator renders a component, sign in included, it renders that component using the function render scene. Render scene is always called with an instance of the navigator. And the navigator is what has all those really convenient methods like push, pop, and immediately replace view stack. All those functions that we use to actually navigate around in our application. All we had to do was pass the navigator into the component being rendered by the navigator. For the very initial view, the very initial component that's rendered, which is sign in, the sign in received an instance of the navigator as a property. So that means that whenever a user does something inside the component that warrants some form of navigation, all we have to do is call this props navigator and then basically manipulate the view stack however we want. When we actually push a view, we don't actually push like a instance of a component onto the stack. Instead, we push a route, and a route consists of an object with a name property. And the actual name, the value of that name, is the name of the route that we want to go visit. One question that I'm sure you will very, very quickly have, and we're not going to end up doing inside of this application because it's just a little bit outside of scope, but I'm almost positive that one of your first questions might be, okay, well, this is, totally awesome. I can navigate between different views, but how do I communicate between different views, right? If I have a list of, let's say I'm showing a list of users here, or a list of, say, books, and I want to navigate to a very particular book, and I tap on it, and I want to, that should push a new view onto the stack and show details about that particular book. How do I do that? How do I tell that second view you're supposed to show this particular book? Well, it's really not that bad. All we have to do is we can add something like, say, book ID, and this could be, say, this.state.book ID, or maybe, since it's a property of this particular component, maybe it's like props.book.id, or whatever piece of information it might be here. So we really just added on to the route definition here. If you look over in main, whenever we render a scene, we pass the entire route into that new component. So when we said, hey, push this new view with name of sign up with this particular book ID, we're passing that book ID in. That book ID is contained inside this route object right here. And so when this other view gets created, presumably that detail on that very particular book, it could say this.props.bookid, and that would be the book ID that you passed from the component that was the source of the navigation. So in words, that's probably really confusing. We will eventually do an example of this navigation, but I just wanted to give you a very quick example of, hey, here's how you would communicate across views when you're doing navigation. Okay, so that is our first bit of navigation. The next thing we need to do here is to actually flesh out this sign up screen right here. So let's go ahead and do that inside of the next section.